Welcome to the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library Museum. My name's Tom Schwartz. I'm the director. And I just want to remind everyone that as part of our holiday tradition for the Library Association members, we offer a 20% discount in the museum store. And so you may want to, at the end of the program, go and take a look. If you want those cowboy ornaments for your tree, there are plenty there. And hope you kind of avail yourself of that and get in the holiday spirit. Instead of me introducing the speaker tonight, someone who is both friends with the speaker and also an honorary cowboy is here and can provide much more information. For those of you who were at the Set Momjen talk, you realize that historians and researchers are very much indebted to collectors because collectors are the individuals that really go and they gather and preserve material that later go to institutions and kind of become the basis for the great institutional collections. Marty Kelly is one of those collectors who has a vast array of memorabilia and information on cowboys and also on Hollywood's use of cowboys. So here to tell you more about Mr. Kelly is former director of the Hoover, Director Emeritus, Tim Walsh.
Hello everybody. Well, this is the first time anyone's called me a cowboy. I mean, called anyone from Detroit a cowboy, I suppose. Well, I hope, in fact, looking out at the audience, I can see a lot of folks who I saw back here, I think it was 2003 when we did that extraordinary winter exhibit called Hollywood Cowboys. And it was the result of a collaboration between many people, not the least of whom was, of course, Marty Kelly, as Tom mentioned to you. Marty's one of those extraordinary people who's had many passions in life. He was a businessman and a community development executive, but in his off hours, his passion was cowboy films and movies. He has something like 5,000 cowboy films on either videotape or DVD, as well as many of the lobby cards and other memorabilia in his basement. So there's just about there's hardly a thing about Hollywood as far as the cowboy films are concerned that Marty doesn't seem to know. He can tell you who the stunt doubles are for most of the people in all types of films. In fact, every Thursday night Marty conducts what we might call a salon for a small number of Coralville and Iowa City elites. Those of you who are here who go will get a snicker out of that. But there's 4 or 5 old geezers who hang out at Marty's house, and we watch old cowboy films. Last night we watched My Darling Clementine, John Ford's classic with Henry Fonda. And we watched the finished version that Daryl Zanuck had approved, and then Marty said, "Now let's watch the alternate version," which would have been another 2 hours, but we decided we weren't quite the scholars that Marty was. Well, I wanted to tell you a little bit of how Marty got started with all of this. Marty was an undergraduate at Villanova University in Pennsylvania and was taking a course on writing. And one of the assignments was to write a letter to a celebrity. Now, this was back in the 1950s, and a lot of his classmates made obvious choices. Some of the guys chose Marilyn Monroe, others chose Clark Gable or other movie stars. Well, Marty took an alternate course and chose a classic cowboy villain named Jack Elam. Some of you will remember Jack, of the sort of wandering eye. Jack had had an accident as a young boy and had an artificial eye. which gave him that sort of sinister look. Well, Marty wrote they all wrote to their respective stars. Most of them got back a postcard, thank you very much, we appreciate your interest in our films. Marty got back this thick packet with autographed pictures and other memorabilia. As far as we know, this may have been the first fan letter that Jack Elam ever got. But it led to a 50-year friendship, or maybe not quite 50 years, Jack's been gone for a while now. But certainly it's led to 50 years plus of Marty's interest in cowboy films and acting. He's been out to Hollywood many times, met a lot of the great actors, personal friend of David Huddleston and Ernie Borgnine. I know I'm dropping a lot of names, but lots of different cowboy stars and actors that he's met over the course of his lifetime. So he's a real treat, a real Iowa treasure. So please welcome him to this stage to talk a little bit about Cowboys and Christmas, Gene Autry and Roy Rogers in particular. Marty Kelly, by the way, the most popular speaker on the Iowa Humanities Speakers Bureau.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I do love cowboys. And Jack and I became very close friends. In fact, I stayed at his home many times. He used to call me up. He said, one time he called me up and my youngest son was playing football for Regina. And he said, we're shooting a movie in Texas, why don't you come down? So I said, well, this movie, the football game is tonight. I said, I can come down Sunday. He said, all right, come down Sunday. So I did. I flew down, rented a car and drove over to the motel where they were staying, and walked in. They said, you're staying in room number 1 and the big card game is in room number 2. I'm not a gambler, so I said, I'll just watch the card game. Well, if you know a little bit about poker, they were playing table stakes. Table stakes means you put on a table what you're willing to win or lose. But once you lose it, you can't play anymore. So I sat down, Jack's sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and this big guy who was in a few movies, but he was in a road construction business. He had $10,000 on the table. And Jack said, you want to play? I said, no thanks. And watch him, and the star of the movie was the guy he wanted to get. So he was playing pretty reckless until he lost his whole $10,000. And he couldn't play anymore. He had to leave. He could sit there, but he couldn't play. And I was just as happy. Jack plays a very strategic game. He won a few dollars, but he didn't lose anything. And so the next day, he said, be out in the car. How a movie is done when they go on location. The star of the movie drives in a big, fancy car and a chauffeur. The second star drives in like a Buick and a chauffeur. And when it gets down to the ones that are just smaller parts, they ride in a bus to the movie. So we got to the movie, he said, come on, get in the Buick with me. So we rode down, and the star had a giant truck made into a home. And 3 country and western singers owned that truck. I can't think of their names. But anyway, that's where he was. Jack had the second biggest Winnebago I've ever seen for him. And it was just him. His wife wasn't there. It was just me. And so we went in. He had all his clothes all ready to put on when he was called. And we sat in there. We talked. And a couple other guys came in. And it was really, I had a wonderful time watching him do these things. When I first went there, they had an opening scene where they walked. Jack was a deputy and the sheriff, and they walked around, and the cameraman is there, and I'm standing behind the director, and I'm flashing. I started clicking pictures. He turned around and said, Marty, don't do that. Well, that was it. I didn't do it anymore. But he became a pretty good director. He directed a number of John Wayne movies, and he became a good friend, another good friend of the group. And I was there just a couple of days, and I don't know how much you know about watching to make a movie. They can be there 10 hours and film exactly maybe 2 minutes of the movie. Most of the time it's moving the cameras, a different angle, doing this, doing that, doing the other thing. director, there's one of the actors doesn't do it right, say the right words, so they have to do it over again. But I just love doing that kind of stuff. So then the company I worked for sent me to work for the guys in California. So I went to California once a month. So every time I'd go there, I'd say, I'd be at the office doing things, and Jack did a TV show called The Dakotas, which is not available DVD or anyplace. I have copies of it, but it's not available. And I called him up, I said, Jack, I got some of the Dakota shows and I put them on VHS. And I got some for you. Now he was in Santa Barbara then, I said, I'm coming up for dinner. He said, yeah, do you want to take the marshal with you? So I said, I don't even know the marshal. So he said, I'll call you back. He called me back 4 o'clock, be in the Wilshire Diner, he'll be in there having coffee. Well, that was an interesting night. I picked him up, we went up there, we had a nice dinner, we were watching the movie. I was sitting between the two of them, in the middle of the two of them, I should say. And he's drinking like crazy. Now I got to drive this guy all the way back to Los Angeles. And all the way back he's saying, let's stop at a bar for a drink. And I'm not much of a drink. In fact, I don't drink at all anymore. But I said, no, I got to be at work tomorrow. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. So finally I got him back to his house and left. But he wanted to stop. I got to do this. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go, oh, brother. They used to call me at work all the time, and I'd chat with him. He's a nice man. But he wasn't my type of guy. Jack I really admired and liked, and he was always a class guy to me. And when my wife and kids went out, he treated us to lunch and had our pictures taken with him. And later on when I met David Huddleston, he called him from my house, and he said, when are you going to come out, Marty? And I said, well, we're going to go back to New Jersey our first year out here, but next year we're coming to California. So 4 kids, Marion and I, drove all the way to California and met him in person. Had a wonderful time. But that's what drove me to like all these movies. So, as I said, I got thousands of movies and I've met a lot of these actors. We're going to show just 2 clips from I use for Humanities. Humanity hired me about 7 years ago to give talks to groups for them. And I just did one yesterday in Knoxville, Iowa, to a group of 50 in a senior citizen center. And we had a good time, except my GPS couldn't tell me how to find Carville when I left. I had to improvise there, but I got back. We had a young man here when we did the last show by the name of Johnny Western. Johnny Western was a backup band for him, and he worked on the road with him for 20 years. It was a lot of so he had a lot to talk about. Gene and the country and western singers and how much they got along. Because one of the things I can just see him standing over there. So he wrote for the TV show. Oh, help me out here.
Paladin.
Paladin, right? He wrote that theme song, and he tells the story of how they wanted him to just sell the rights for a couple $100, but his advisor told him not to, and he finally worked it out with them. And he said he has 5 daughters. He lives in Mesa now. They're grown and he has grandchildren, and he worked it out with his lawyer, and he gets, every time that's played, he gets paid for it. So he got from selling a thing for about $1,000 to making about $750,000 over his lifetime. So that was the song that made him, and it was probably the most popular song he ever wrote by any stretch of imagination. Now, obviously, Gene, to this crowd here, always think of Roy Rogers and Gene Autry in the same breath. And there's so many more, but those were the 2 most popular in my time when I was in the 40s when I'd go to the movies. That's when they were around. I'll tell you a couple facts. Alan Ladd was only 5'5". Jack Palance was 6'2". So that whole picture, you never saw them standing side by side for obvious reasons. But it was so funny, knowing Jack Elam as I did, I said to him one day, what was a role you had an opportunity and turned it down? And he said, Shane. He said, I read the script, they offered it to me, and Palance only said about 15 words in the whole movie. So he said, I thought it was beneath me to take the part. Palance took it. It was a great picture. He said, I made a big mistake, which was true in my mind. But I met Jack Palance. I used to go back to New Jersey all the time. That's where my headquarters were. And I went back with one of the fellows here from Iowa that was an accountant, and he was my accountant. So we fly into Newark Airport, and we're waiting it's in the evening, we're waiting, it's 10 o'clock at night, and all the men are dressed in suits, and we're waiting for the last rental car place. We had a reservation. And I'm looking at the line, and about 3 up from me is Jack Palance. Now, his mother and father owned a farm just over the Delaware River on the other side in Pennsylvania. So I'm just waiting in my line. He goes up and he doesn't have a reservation and they don't have any cars. So he's out of luck. So he steps aside. We go up and get our car and he's still standing there. I said, Mr. Palance, I said, we're going in that direction. I don't mind going the extra 20 miles to take you to your parents' house. He thought, and we're all wearing suits. I said, am I going to mug the guy? He said, no, no thanks. I said, okay. I got my car. All the lights went off in the airport. I don't know whatever he did, but there was he must have had to take a cab to Pennsylvania because he had a free ride and he was all by himself. And that was my only experience with Jack Palance. In the first one, we see all the Cowboys. Some of them are new. Monty Hale, Rex Allen, they were all Republic stars. The other guys were retired, mostly retired or playing only villains, but they were silent stars or whatever in the Western movies. It's kind of nice that I know all that stuff, but I spend a lot of time figuring it out. So if you have a question, I'll be glad to answer it for you. If not, there's plenty to eat out there. There's fun to do. You got to pick out your Christmas tree ornaments before they raise the prices here. You know, these museums, you got to worry about them. I think, what did he tell me? So you got 25 minutes more before you're out of there. Thank you for having me.